The need to actually bear witness to what has actually happened to people. And sometimes that means bearing witness to real horror, you know? Because of course those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. So not about revenge, although I do quite like a revenge fantasy, or seeking compensation for an atrocity. It's actually about being able to transcend the awful things that have happened to us and actually make them a gift to other people. This is something I feel deeply passionate about. You know, if I had not found my survivor mission, I don't know if I'd be standing here today. You know, because one of the things for me is how do we live in a world that for me is often incomprehensible, you know? And I think the way to do that is to live with the truth and not buy into the bullshit. And that is really going to be like the heart of what I'm going to say to you today, to hold on to the truth. In the face of overwhelming, there are forces that are working so hard to stop us really holding on to the truth and our own realities. But that, for me, is what we actually have to do. This, you know, this idea about the dialectic of trauma, where people's experiences are both simultaneously drawing our attention to the fact that something dreadful has happened, while simultaneously trying to deflect our attention away from it, because it is too unbearable and unspeakable. And of course, part of what counters that is creating a space where people feel you truly want to hear what I've got to say, and you will bear witness and you will stand alongside me as I remember these horrific things that have happened to me. But I want to extend this idea of doublethink to think more broadly about the ways in which doublethink operates both in the psychiatric system currently and society in more general. So of course the idea of doublethink comes from George Orwell's classic novel 1984, which I think we're actually living through right now, right? Talk about ahead of the time. Of course it's famously set in this dystopian universe where you know, the inhabitants of this dystopian universe had to hold these contradictory ideas. So doublethink, so things like war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Quite Trumpian, I would say. Doublethink is the act of ordinary people simultaneously accepting two mutually contradictory beliefs as correct, often in distinct social contexts. So it's somewhat related, but almost the opposite to cognitive dissonance, where you are aware with cognitive dissonance, hang on a minute, these two things don't actually fit together. But the doublethink is notable due to the lack of cognitive dissonance. Thus, the person is completely unaware of any conflict or contradiction. So this is something that I've heard many psychiatrists say, this kind of thing. So it would not surprise me if such abuse greatly worsens the psychopathology of a child already in the early stages of the illness. This is from a paper from an eminent psychiatrist at the Institute of Psychiatry. You can read this bullshit, loads of it out there, you know, once you find it, it's everywhere. But can you see the cognitive dissonance there? I've been with somebody who said, you know, I was systematically raped throughout my childhood, I was bandied about, I was put into care, I was abused in care, I've experienced horrific racism, I grew up really, really poor, I then was in a domestic violence relationship, I've been trafficked, I mean, really extensive, you know, horrific trauma histories. And then what I've heard psychiatrists say, it's dreadful that you've experienced all those things and you've got schizophrenia. How can you, as a seemingly intelligent person, you know, hold this information about the you know, masses of trauma that this person has endured, and then through some kind of bizarre loop in your head, transfer that into a biological explanation? The desperate need to privilege biological explanations is astonishing. In fact, Lucy, Sue and Fernando and I wrote a paper about it a few years ago, actually, or a blog post, actually talking about the multifarious ways that biological psychiatry uses to sort of reinvent itself, to cling on to its power, is pretty desperate, actually. Although I don't feel sorry for them, because at the end of the day, those fuckers can take away people's liberty, they can pump you full of psychotropic medication, they can take your DVLA licence away, they can stop you having children if they decide that actually you need to be on your medication forever. These are things that happen to people every day in this country.